Lieutenant Arya Dawson arrived at the military base with a straight back, calm eyes, and a small duffel bag on her shoulder. She did not look nervous, even though she was the only woman in a camp filled with tough, loud, and highly trained male soldiers. The sun was sharp, the dust was flying, and the sound of boots, shouting, and gunfire drills filled the air. Arya walked in silently, her discipline showing in every step. She had been sent here to join a special combat unit, a team known for being one of the toughest in the force. But the moment she stepped in, she could already feel eyes on her. Not curious, but judging. Most of the soldiers were not used to seeing a woman in elite military training. Many of them already believed she wouldn't last even 1 week. Some stared, some smirked, and some didn't even bother to hide their doubt. Among them was Sergeant Blake Harper, a man known for his loud mouth and arrogance. He was the type who believed rank was measured by how loud you were, not how skilled you were. When he saw Arya, he grinned and whispered something to the soldier beside him, making them both laugh. Arya noticed, but ignored it. She had seen men like this before. As she reached the gathering area, the commander ordered everyone to line up for introduction. Each soldier had to state their name, rank, and call sign. This was normal in special units. Your call sign was your identity in the field. One by one, the men introduced themselves with names like Falcon, Razor, Shadow, and Wolf. The energy was loud, full of ego and competition. Then it was Arya's turn. She stepped forward, gave a small salute and said in a clear voice, "Lieutenant Arya Dawson. Call sign, Viper 1. For a second, nobody reacted. Then Blake suddenly burst out laughing. It wasn't a small laugh, it was loud and mocking, the kind meant to embarrass someone. "Viper 1, he repeated. "What? Did she watch a movie and pick the coolest name?" A few others laughed with him. Someone joked, "Maybe the snake bit someone in training, that's why she got it." Another said, "Maybe she just likes reptiles." The jokes spread quickly. Easy laughter, cheap disrespect. Arya did not respond. She didn't defend herself, didn't argue, didn't even explain the meaning behind the call sign. She just stood there, still and silent, as if she had practiced ignoring ignorance her entire life. But inside, she knew something that none of them did. Her call sign was not just a name. It was earned, written into classified files, connected to missions that were never spoken about in public. But she was not here to impress them. She was here to work. The commander didn't laugh. He just looked at Blake for a moment, a look that said, "You'll regret that later." But he didn't say anything. He simply continued the introductions. Arya stayed quiet, blending back into the line, but Blake kept looking at her with a smirk, thinking he had already won something. Later that day, the soldiers gathered in the mess hall for lunch. Blake continued his jokes, this time louder, with more people listening. "Viper 1, he said, raising his cup. "Deadliest snake in the world. Unless you're Arya, then it's just a cute garden worm." More laughter followed. Arya sat alone at a table, eating silently, not giving his words power. She had learned long ago that people who laugh too much at others are usually scared of being exposed themselves. What Blake didn't know was that she had faced far more dangerous people than him. She had stood in real war zones, in places where one mistake meant death. She had rescued people who were forgotten, survived missions that were never written in books, and earned her call sign through actions, not words. While Blake was busy showing off, she was studying the camp layout, the drill schedule, the team structure. Her mind was already preparing for what was coming next. She knew that sooner or later there would be a real test, and she also knew that laughing mouths close very fast when danger arrives. Even the senior officers watched her quietly. They knew more than they said. They had seen her file. They knew what Viper 1 really meant. But in the military, respect was not given, it was proven. Arya understood that better than anyone. She didn't want special treatment. She wanted the battlefield to speak for her. By the end of the day, she had already made an impression. Not by talking, not by bragging, but by doing nothing. Her silence made some soldiers curious, some annoyed, and some nervous. But the one most bothered was Blake. He could not understand why she didn't react. He thought silence meant weakness. He had no idea it meant control. What Blake thought was a joke was actually the beginning of a lesson he wasn't ready for. The girl he mocked for having a dramatic call sign was going to be the same one who would one day make him freeze, not with anger, but with shock and respect. She was not here to explain herself. She was here to show them who Viper One really was. The second day at the base started early, before sunrise. The air was cold, and the sky was still dark when the soldiers gathered for their morning drill. Everyone was tired, but Blake was full of energy, not because he was ready to train, but because he had planned to make fun of Arya again. He had already decided that he would not let her forget the Viper One joke. In his mind, she didn't deserve a strong call sign. He believed she had not earned it the way real soldiers did. What he didn't know was that real soldiers didn't waste time trying to prove they were better, they just acted better. When the group lined up, the instructor asked each soldier to step forward and shout their call sign with confidence. It was a drill meant to build team spirit and pride. One by one, they shouted their names: Falcon, Shadow, Razor. Then it was Arya's turn. She stepped forward, calm as always, looked straight ahead, and said, "Viper One." Before anyone could react, Blake loudly pretended to cough and said, "More like Viper Zero." Some soldiers laughed again, even louder than yesterday. Arya didn't flinch. She didn't even look in Blake's direction. But this time the instructor did. His eyes hardened for a moment. He said nothing, but Blake didn't notice the warning. For the rest of the morning, Blake continued to make small comments whenever Arya did something. If she lifted weights, he would say, "Careful, Viper. Don't drop it." If she was running, he'd shout, "Hope the snake can keep up." It wasn't just teasing. It was trying to break her confidence. But Arya stayed steady. She didn't argue, didn't fight, didn't show anger. She just did her work, and the more silent she remained, the more Blake tried to provoke her. By afternoon, something new started to spread around camp. Rumors. Some soldiers who were bored and loved gossip began making up stories about how Arya got her call sign. One said, "Her uncle probably works in the Army High Command. That's why she got it." Another joked, "Maybe she just picked it herself because she thought it sounded cool." There were even whispers that she only got into the unit because the military wanted to look modern and equal. None of them knew that every word they spoke showed more about their insecurity than her ability. Arya heard the whispers. She didn't react, but she listened. Not to get hurt, but to understand who she was dealing with. She had learned long ago that, in the military, sometimes the loudest soldier is the weakest one. Real strength doesn't need to be announced. It gets revealed. But while most soldiers just mocked her, one thing started to bother the higher officers. Arya never reacted even once. No anger, no nervousness, no confusion. Normally, a new recruit would try to defend themselves or at least explain their background. Arya didn't. She simply acted like none of it mattered. And that kind of silence was not normal, it was controlled, trained, experienced. The truth was, Arya wasn't just ignoring them. She was watching them. She was learning how they moved, how they reacted, who followed orders, who panicked, who bragged, who stayed calm. She was studying the unit like a chessboard. She wasn't here to win their approval. She was here to measure their capability because sooner or later, they would be in real danger together. Later in the evening, while most soldiers were laughing in the mess hall, Blake decided to push things further. He stood up and loudly asked the whole room, "Does anyone even know why she's called Viper One? Shouldn't we give her a new name? Something like Garden Snake." The room laughed. Blake raised his cup like a hero. Arya was sitting on the other side, eating quietly. Then something unexpected happened. One of the senior officers, Captain Rowan, who rarely spoke to anyone, stepped up beside Blake. He looked at him for a long second and said in a calm but heavy voice, "Some call signs are earned in places you've never stepped in. Be careful mocking what you don't understand." Without another word, he walked away. The whole room went silent for a moment. Blake tried to laugh it off, but the sound didn't come as strong as before. Some soldiers exchanged confused looks. That was the first time someone hinted that there was something more behind Arya's call sign. something Blake and the others knew nothing about. That night, Blake couldn't sleep easily. His ego was still strong, but for the first time, there was a small doubt in his mind. What if Viper One wasn't just a name? What if she really had done something he didn't know about? Meanwhile, Arya lay in her bunk, calm, eyes closed. She didn't care about the jokes. She cared about the mission ahead. She knew something the others didn't. The real test was coming soon, and when it came, there would be no mocking, no jokes, no noise. Only action. And when that day arrived, the one who laughed the most would be the one who went completely silent. Rumors spread fast in a military base, especially when people have nothing better to do than talk. By the third day, Arya's call sign Viper One had become the favorite topic of everyone who liked gossip more than training. What started as Blake's jokes slowly turned into stories. Stories that grew bigger and stranger every time someone repeated them. Some soldiers said Arya got the call sign because she once fainted during training, and someone jokingly called her a snake on the floor. Others said she only got accepted into the special unit because she had connections in high command. A few even claimed she had never seen real combat and was probably just a desk officer, pretending to be tough. None of it was true. But in a place full of pride and ego, lies always travel faster than truth. Blake enjoyed every second of it. He loved being the center of attention, and making Arya the target of jokes gave him power. Every time someone repeated one of the rumors, he smiled to himself. He believed he was exposing her as a fake. In reality, he was exposing himself as someone who needed to tear others down to feel important. But something strange happened as the rumors grew. Arya didn't react at all. She didn't explain anything. She didn't argue. She didn't even look offended. She just continued training, silent and focused. The more she ignored them, the more confused some soldiers became. One of them, Private Mason, whispered to another, "Why doesn't she say anything? If it was me, I'd be shouting the truth." The other replied, "Maybe she has no truth to tell." But a third soldier quietly said, "Or maybe the truth is something we aren't allowed to know." Those words didn't reach Blake, but they reached someone who mattered, the commander. Colonel Hayes knew everything about Arya. He had read her classified file, the one locked in a cabinet most soldiers didn't even know existed. He knew why her call sign was Viper One. He knew what she had done, the danger she had faced, and the number of lives she had saved. The only reason the rest of the unit didn't know was because her mission was marked Level 5 classified. Even speaking about it without clearance was illegal. But when he watched Blake and the others mocking her without knowing anything, he didn't step in. Not yet. He wanted the lesson to come naturally. That afternoon, Blake pushed things even further. During training, the teams were working on hand-to-hand combat practice. Blake made sure he was paired with Arya. He wasn't trying to train. He wanted to embarrass her in front of everyone. When the whistle blew, he attacked fast, expecting her to panic or back away. But instead, something happened that made the whole unit go silent. Arya didn't step back. She didn't hesitate. She didn't even blink. In one smooth, controlled move, she dodged his punch, twisted his arm, and brought him to the ground so fast that even the instructor's eyes widened. Blake hit the ground hard, breath knocked out of him. Before he could react, Arya released him and stepped back, completely calm, as if she had just finished tying her shoelaces. She didn't brag. She didn't smirk. She didn't even look at him. She just walked back to her place like nothing happened. The silence was louder than any insult. For the first time, Blake didn't have a joke. He just sat there, shocked, trying to understand how he, a trained sergeant, got taken down in less than 3 seconds by someone he thought was weak. The instructor finally spoke. That was not basic training level. That was Special Forces level. A few soldiers looked at each other. Special Forces? How could she know that? Later, in the mess hall, no one laughed at her call sign anymore. They still whispered, but the tone had changed. It was no longer pure insult, it was curiosity, and maybe a little fear. Blake, however, refused to accept what happened. His pride was burning. He convinced himself it was just luck. He said loudly, "She only got me because I wasn't ready." Let's see her do that in a real mission. But deep inside, for the first time he felt something new: doubt. That night, while the other soldiers slept, Blake lay awake. He stared at the ceiling, replaying the moment she took him down. Her eyes, her speed, her control, it wasn't a fluke. It was training. Real training. The kind you don't get from normal drills. He started to wonder, who trained her? Where had she been before this base? What kind of missions had she done to earn a name like Viper One? But his ego didn't let him accept the truth. Instead of respect, he chose anger. Instead of learning, he chose to prove her wrong. And while Blake was planning how to expose her, Arya was already moving ahead. She wasn't thinking about Blake. She wasn't thinking about the rumors. She was thinking about the mission briefing scheduled in 2 days, the one that would change everything. Because soon the unit would face something real. And on that day, every rumor, every joke, every laugh would disappear. And Viper One would finally make sense. The real test began on the 4th day, and this time it wasn't just running, push-ups, or hand-to-hand drills. It was a full combat simulation, an intense and realistic battlefield scenario designed to test teamwork, leadership, and survival instincts. The soldiers were split into squads, each given a mission: move through a rough training zone, avoid ambush, and extract a target while under pressure. Blake's squad and Arya's squad were combined for this mission. Blake didn't like it. He felt like the instructors were trying to force teamwork between them. But he also saw it as a chance to prove that Arya wasn't as skilled as she seemed. He told the squad, "I'll lead. Stick to my orders." No one argued because most were used to Blake acting like the leader. Arya didn't react. She just checked her gear quietly and followed. The simulation began. The squad moved through the mock battlefield. Dirt, broken buildings, fake explosions in the distance. Blake walked in front, acting confident, shouting orders, trying to sound like a hero. But something was wrong. His route choices were loud and rushed. He wasn't paying attention to silence, cover, or angles. He assumed nothing would go wrong. Then it did. Halfway through the mission, the team was ambushed. Hidden paint-round snipers hit 2 of their men in seconds. Alarms went off. Red smoke filled the air. Blake froze. His confidence vanished. His voice shook, and he shouted confused commands like, "Spread out," and "Move back." Even though the situation needed calm, fast thinking, the squad looked lost. Chaos had replaced control. And that's when Arya stepped forward. She didn't panic. She didn't shout. She spoke in a clear, controlled voice. "Take cover to the left wall. 2 shooters on high ground. Razor, suppress fire. Wolf, flank right." Her orders were direct, specific, and smart. The squad listened, not because of her rank, but because her voice carried certainty. Within seconds, everyone moved exactly as she said. While Blake was still struggling to breathe, Arya had already located the threat, reacted to it, and created a plan. Then she did something no one expected. She advanced alone, using cover like a ghost, moving faster and quieter than anyone had seen. She took out both sniper positions in under 30 seconds. The hit markers flashed. Target down. Target down. The simulation wasn't even halfway done, but the team was already looking at her differently. The mission continued. Every time a problem appeared, Blake hesitated, and Arya solved it. She spotted traps before anyone else, signaled movement without speaking, and gave orders like someone who had done this in real life because she had. By the time they reached the extraction point, the squad was no longer following Blake. They were following her. The mission ended with the team finishing faster than any other squad that day. When they returned, the instructor looked at the timesheet, raised an eyebrow, and said, "That's a record." Blake didn't look proud. He looked embarrassed and angry. He didn't say anything, but his face showed everything. He thought this mission would expose Arya, but instead, it exposed him. Some soldiers walked past Arya and gave her small nods, the kind of respect no rank can force, only action can earn. Others whispered to each other, "How did she move like that?" And, "She's trained way above us." Even the instructors shared glances, as if they already knew the answer. When Blake finally spoke, it wasn't to thank her. It was to defend his ego. He said loudly, "It was just a simulation. Real combat is different. She just got lucky." But no one clapped or laughed this time. The silence told him everything. Luck had nothing to do with what they saw. Arya didn't look at Blake, didn't argue, didn't celebrate. She cleaned her weapon, packed her gear, and walked away like she had done nothing special. Because this, for her, was normal. But deep inside Blake's mind, something shifted. He could no longer deny what he had seen. Her calm, her skill, her instincts, it was military experience far beyond normal training. He didn't want to believe it, but the thought kept hitting him like a hammer. Maybe she wasn't pretending. Maybe the call sign Viper 1 had a real story behind it. Maybe he was the one who wasn't ready to know it. And for the first time, Blake wasn't laughing. He was scared of the truth he didn't know yet. The fifth day at the base felt different. The air was still full of noise, drills, and commands, but something had changed in the way the soldiers looked at Arya. She was no longer just the new girl, or the one with the funny call sign. After the combat simulation, everyone had seen her real ability. They didn't fully understand it, but they could no longer deny it. Even those who once laughed at her were now quiet when she walked by. No one made jokes about Viper 1 anymore. And if they did, they made sure she couldn't hear it, because now, deep inside, they feared that maybe she really was someone dangerous, someone far above their level. But the one who felt it the strongest was Blake. Blake couldn't sleep that night. The same moment kept playing in his head. The ambush, the panic, the frozen feeling in his chest, and Arya stepping forward like she had already seen the battlefield 10 times before. She wasn't panicking. She wasn't confused. She was ready. And that made him feel something he hated, weakness. He tried to tell himself it was just one mission. He tried to believe she was just lucky. But he couldn't ignore what the other soldiers were saying. She moves like special forces. She didn't just shoot fast. She shot clean. She didn't look scared. She looked experienced. Those words cut Blake more than any insult. To protect his pride, he told himself a new story. Maybe she was trained separately, maybe she was groomed for leadership, maybe someone secretly prepared her. But he refused to believe she was better than him because she earned it. The next morning, training continued, but the instructor changed the drills. Instead of group simulations, they worked on individual skill tests, accuracy, endurance, combat decision-making. The kind of tests that don't lie. One by one, each soldier took their turn. Some performed well, some failed, but everyone was waiting quietly for Arya's turn. When her name was called, she stepped up with the same silent focus she always had. No pressure, no ego, no noise. The first test was a shooting challenge, moving targets, long distance, short distance, obstacle reload. Most soldiers struggled to hit half the targets in time. Arya hit all of them. No misses. No hesitation. Her hands moved like they were trained by repetition, like the weapon was a part of her. Even the instructor blinked twice at the scoreboard. Next was reaction speed. Spot the enemy target before it disappears. Most soldiers hit 2 or 3. Arya hit all 5. After that was stealth movement, cross the field unseen. Most made noise. Arya moved like wind. Every test confirmed the same thing. She wasn't normal. She wasn't just trained. She was beyond trained. And while everyone watched in silence, Blake felt his pride cracking again. For the first time, he wasn't just annoyed, he was confused, even afraid. Because nothing about her felt like beginner, rookie, or lucky. She was someone who had already faced things none of them had. What bothered Blake most was that she never tried to show off. She never bragged. She didn't act like she needed anyone's approval. She didn't even look proud of the results. She just did it and walked away. That kind of confidence doesn't come from training. It comes from surviving. Later that day, Blake noticed something else. A few senior officers were talking to Arya privately. They didn't talk to her like a newcomer, they talked to her like someone important. Someone with history. Someone with status. Blake stood far away, trying to hear what they were saying. But he couldn't. He only caught a few words. Mission, classified, clearance, and debrief. That word, classified, hit him hard. That night at dinner, Blake tried to act normal, but he was quieter than usual. The other soldiers noticed. One of them asked, "What's wrong?" Still thinking about losing to Viper 1. Blake forced a laugh, but his eyes were empty. He wasn't laughing anymore. He suddenly wondered, what if everything he said about her was wrong? What if all the jokes he made were about someone who had earned more respect than he ever had? What if the person he mocked was someone who had already saved lives, maybe even more than he ever would? Meanwhile, Arya didn't care about the rumor, the fear, or the attention. She cared about one thing: the upcoming mission briefing. She knew something the others didn't. The training wasn't just for practice. It was preparation. Something real was coming. Something dangerous. And when that moment arrived, the truth would no longer stay hidden. The day was coming when every soldier would finally understand why she was called Viper 1. Not because of a nickname, not because of luck, but because she had already been in a world most of them hadn't even imagined. And when that day came, Blake would not just regret laughing. He would remember every word he said, and wish he had never spoken them. The next morning, the base was unusually quiet. News of the bar incident had spread faster than wildfire. Almost everyone had heard about what happened between Marcus and the woman with the call sign Viper 1. Some people laughed, some were shocked, and some were confused. But one thing was clear: nobody wanted to say a word in front of her now. Marcus, however, walked around pretending nothing had happened. He tried to act normal, but inside he was boiling with embarrassment. He couldn't forget the moment she spoke her call sign and how the entire bar had gone silent. That silence had felt heavier than 100 punches. He replayed the moment in his head again and again. The look in her eyes. The way soldiers stood straight the second she spoke. The respect they showed her. It made him feel small, smaller than he had ever felt. He told himself she had just gotten lucky. He thought maybe she was just overhyped. Maybe her call sign meant nothing. But deep down, he already knew the truth. She wasn't an ordinary pilot. She was someone different, someone dangerous, someone real. Later that day, a sudden alarm echoed through the base. It wasn't a drill, a real emergency alert. Every soldier rushed to their positions. Marcus ran with the rest, still half confused, half excited. They were told a high-level mission briefing was about to take place, and all tactical teams needed to be present. When he entered the briefing room, he saw senior officers, intelligence chiefs, and flight commanders already seated. Only one seat was empty, right next to the main screen. It looked like it was reserved for someone special. Marcus didn't have to guess who. A few seconds later, the door opened, and everyone turned automatically, almost like it was instinct. Their backs straightened, their eyes focused. Even the highest-ranking commander adjusted his posture. She walked in, the same woman Marcus had mocked just a night earlier. But she wasn't wearing casual clothes now. She was in full tactical flight gear. Black suit, utility straps, flight gloves. Her name patch read only one word: Viper. Marcus suddenly understood one thing. Last night, he didn't just embarrass himself in a bar. He embarrassed himself in front of a legend. The commander stepped forward and began speaking to the room, but his tone was not casual, not normal. It was the tone used only for the most dangerous missions. He said the operation was classified at the highest level. A terrorist convoy had been located deep inside hostile territory. Ground teams couldn't get close. Drones couldn't fly low enough. It had to be handled by someone who could enter silently, strike with precision, and leave before anyone even knew they were there. Then the commander said the line that sent chills across the room. This mission will be led in the air by Viper 1. There it was. The real introduction. Not a joke, not a nickname, not something to laugh at. Her call sign wasn't a title, it was a warning. Marcus stared at her, unable to blink. The same woman he doubted, the same woman he laughed at, was now going to lead a mission most pilots would refuse. And the best part? She didn't even look nervous. Her eyes were calm. Her face was steady. She looked like she had done this 100 times already. The mission briefing continued. Every map, every route, every threat marker was explained. And every time she spoke, the room stayed silent. Not a single person interrupted. Not a single person joked. Not a single person even shifted in their seat. Because everyone there knew when Viper 1 talked, you listened. Marcus tried not to look guilty, but he couldn't stop his heart from sinking. Last night he saw her as a woman in jeans and a jacket. Today he saw her as she truly was, a weapon in human form. Then something happened that made him freeze again. At the end of the briefing, the commander announced the mission roster. Shockingly, Marcus's name was on the support team list. He was assigned as part of ground intel directly under the same mission Viper 1 was flying. Marcus didn't know whether to feel honored or terrified. She turned her head slightly and looked at him. Not with anger. Not with ego. Just a calm stare. Like she already knew everything about him. Like she wasn't even bothered. That stare said a lot more than her voice ever needed to. She didn't need revenge. Her existence was revenge enough. The room dismissed. Teams began preparing. Commanders gave orders. Mechanics rolled aircraft out of hangars. But Marcus stood frozen, still trying to understand how everything flipped so fast. He wasn't laughing anymore. Now he was praying he wouldn't be the reason she failed. Because one thing was already clear in his mind. Once she was in the air, there was no enemy she feared, and no mistake she forgave. And tomorrow he was going to witness exactly why the world called her Viper 1. The mission day arrived before sunrise. The entire base was awake, but it wasn't like normal mornings. There were no jokes, no casual talks, no relaxed faces. Everyone moved with purpose. Engineers worked on aircraft, officers checked radios, and the tactical team reviewed maps one last time. The atmosphere was tense, but not because of fear, it was because Viper 1 was flying today. Marcus stood with his assigned team, trying to look focused, but his mind was all over the place. He couldn't forget everything that had happened, and now he was being sent into a mission where she was the lead. Every time he looked at her jet, he felt something strange. A mix of fear, respect, and regret. Her jet looked different from the others. Sleek, black, customized. No flashy markings, no painted names, no cartoon symbols like other pilots like to add. Just one thing near the cockpit. A small Viper snake symbol. Nothing more. Nothing less. Silent, deadly, confident. She walked toward her jet, helmet in hand, and people stepped out of her way without being asked. Not because of rank, not because of fear, but because they respected her. Even the commander stood straighter when she passed. Marcus watched closely. She moved like she had done this 1,000 times. No nervousness, no shaking hands, no useless talk. Just calm focus. Before entering her jet, she stopped for a moment. She looked at the map one final time, then simply nodded, as if saying, "I've got this." No dramatic speech, no loud confidence, just certainty. The operation finally began. Marcus was inside an armored vehicle with the team responsible for ground intel support. Their task was simple but life-threatening. Stay near the extraction zone, observe enemy movement, and update Viper 1 in real time. If they made one mistake, the mission could fail, and Viper 1 would be flying into a trap. The enemy convoy was deep inside a region controlled by a brutal militia. No communication towers. No satellite help. Only Viper 1 in the air, and Marcus's team on the ground. The atmosphere inside the vehicle was quiet. Radios buzzed. Maps were open. Everyone was tense, but especially Marcus. He knew if anything went wrong, people would blame him first. Then the voice came through the comms. Calm, steady, cold. Viper 1 airborne. Just hearing her voice made the team relax a little. Even through the radio, she sounded like someone in control. Minutes passed. Marcus watched her jet on the radar. Just a small moving dot, flying low and silent across enemy borders. No fighter pilot usually flew this low. One radar ping and she was done. But she knew what she was doing. She was using the terrain like a shield, slipping through valleys, hiding between mountains. It was like watching a shadow move. Then the moment came. Marcus spotted the convoy on the drone camera. Trucks filled with weapons, soldiers armed to the teeth, and armored jeeps with mounted guns. The convoy was bigger than expected. Marcus called it in. Viper 1, enemy numbers doubled. Extra vehicles confirmed. He expected her to sound worried. She wasn't. Copy. Adjusting strike pattern. That was it. No panic. No fear. Seconds later, her jet appeared in the sky, barely visible, like a black ghost cutting through clouds. And then the world exploded. Her first strike hit the convoy leader's truck. Perfect hit. No warning. No chance to escape. The second and third strikes followed so fast it looked like the explosions happened at the same time. Enemy vehicles tried to scatter, but she was already ahead of them. Every move they made, she countered. Every turn they took, she predicted. Marcus couldn't believe what he was watching. Pilots trained for years to hit moving targets. She was doing it while flying low in hostile air with zero air support. No hesitation. No wasted missiles. Every shot was a message. She wasn't fighting a battle. She was finishing it. Suddenly, enemy anti-air guns opened fire. Tracers flew through the sky. Any normal pilot would have pulled back. Not her. She dropped the jet lower, so low it almost scraped the ground, then released a flare and looped behind the convoy, destroying the gun truck before they could even reload. The radio went silent for a second. Even the soldiers watching couldn't speak. And then her voice came again, calm as ever. Target convoy eliminated. Proceeding to secondary sweep. Like it was just another day. Marcus finally understood why they called her Viper. Not because she was fast. Not because she was deadly. But because she struck before the enemy even knew she was there. The mission wasn't just successful, it was flawless. Everyone in the vehicle stared at the screen, shocked. Marcus didn't say a word. Because now he knew the truth. He hadn't just laughed at her call sign. He had laughed at the most feared pilot in the air. And now he was about to face her again. Not as a critic. Not as a soldier. But as someone who finally understood the kind of legend she was. The base was unusually quiet that evening. No celebration, no cheering, no mission accomplished moment. Everyone knew the mission had been a success, one of the cleanest operations they had seen in years, but nobody dared to act casual. Because everyone was waiting for her to return. Marcus and the ground team stood near the runway, eyes fixed on the dark horizon. The sky was turning orange with sunset. Radio updates said Viper 1 was only minutes away. No one said a word. No one even moved. And then, a faint sound in the distance. Her jet appeared, slicing through the sky with the same silent confidence she left with. No smoke, no damage, no sign of stress. She landed smoothly, not like someone who had just destroyed a full enemy convoy, but like someone who had completed a normal duty. The aircraft rolled to a stop. Ground crew rushed in, not to help, but because they knew who they were serving. Even the most senior officer waited for her to step out first. The cockpit opened. She climbed out, helmet in hand, hair tied, face calm, as if she hadn't just carried a mission that could have gone horribly wrong for anyone else. Marcus watched her closely. He used to think she was quiet because she was weak. Now he understood. She was quiet because she didn't need to speak to prove anything. The commander approached her first. He didn't salute her like a regular pilot. He saluted her with formality, with respect. And she saluted back with the same precision. No handshake. No good job. Just silent respect between warriors. After the commander left, the other soldiers slowly walked toward her. The same soldiers who once doubted, joked, and whispered behind her back. Now no one had anything to say. They stood in line, not ordered, but pulled by something they didn't fully understand. One by one they nodded at her, not out of fear, but out of honor. Even Blake, the loudest one, the one who mocked her first, the one who laughed at her call sign, walked up to her. His face had no pride left, no ego, no excuses. He didn't know what to say. Words felt too small. So he simply said, "I was wrong." Not loud, not dramatic, just honest. And for the first time she looked him in the eyes. Not with anger, not with revenge, just calm truth. She replied, "You weren't wrong about me. You just didn't know me." Then she walked past him. And that one line hit harder than anything else. She didn't need to insult him. She didn't need to brag. She didn't need to remind him of his mistake. because her actions had already spoken louder than anything he could ever say. Later that night, the mess hall was full of soldiers eating, talking, laughing. But when she entered, the room shifted. Conversations paused. Heads turned. Not out of curiosity, but out of respect. She picked her food, sat alone at a corner table, just like always. She didn't act like a hero. She didn't demand attention. That's when Marcus walked in. He didn't go to his usual loud group of friends. He walked straight to her table, tray in hand. He didn't ask permission to sit. He didn't pretend to be confident. He just sat quietly across from her. After a moment, he finally said, "I don't think I'll ever understand how you do what you do." She didn't look up. She just ate quietly and replied, "You don't have to understand. You just have to respect the job." Silence. But a good silence. Then Marcus asked the question he had been holding for weeks. "Why do they call you Viper One?" She paused. For the first time, she gave a small, real smile. Not emotionless, not forced, but a smile with memory behind it. She looked at him and said, "Because in my old unit, the enemy learned something. You never see the viper until it bites." Marcus didn't say anything. He didn't need to. He finally understood the story behind the call sign. Not a nickname, not a joke, a warning. Later that night, as the base went quiet and the lights dimmed, Marcus looked out at the runway where her jet was parked alone. He thought about the old Marcus, the one who laughed, who judged, who assumed things about people he didn't know. That version of him died the moment he saw Viper One in action. Now, he didn't just respect her. He wanted to learn from her. Because real strength wasn't loud. Real skill didn't brag. Real soldiers didn't show off. They showed up. That night, Marcus understood something he would never forget. Some people walk with rank. Some walk with power. But a few walk with a reputation. One earned in silence, witnessed in action, and feared by enemies. And she was one of them. Viper One. The pilot no one believed, until she showed them who she really was.